Early on, in the 2021 Netflix movie Red Notice, Nolan Booth, played by Ryan Reynolds, returns to his luxurious home in Bali and, in a close-up, pours himself a glass of Aviation American Gin. For the rest of the scene, the bottle of Aviation is featured prominently, with the label facing the camera. In case you're not aware, Aviation Gin is co-owned by Ryan Reynolds himself. He promotes it regularly on his social media accounts, his YouTube channel, and in his reality documentary TV show, Welcome to Wrexham, where a bottle of Aviation Gin is one of the very first images we see in the first episode. Back in Red Notice, a few minutes after the Aviation Gin cameo, there's a scene where John Hartley, played by Dwayne Johnson, goes to a bar and the bartender pours him, in a luxurious close-up, a glass of Terramana tequila, the liquor brand founded by Dwayne Johnson in 2020. And at this point in the movie, I started wondering, am I just watching a commercial? Look, movie stars have been doing brand partnerships for decades. Lauren Bacall and High Point Coffee, Catherine Zeta-Jones and T-Mobile, Morpheus from The Matrix and Kia Automobiles. But what Johnson and Reynolds are doing feels different. Over the past 7 or 8 years, their acting careers and business ventures have become so deeply entwined that now they're essentially one and the same. So much of their public presence is devoted to being spokesmen for their companies that their movies end up just feeling like an extension of that. Reynolds' on-screen persona in Mint Mobile commercials has become indistinguishable from his characters in movies like Red Notice. And so that movie doesn't just feel like a commercial for gin or tequila brands, but a commercial for the personal brands of Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds. In our previous episode, we spent a lot of time discussing the death of the movie star, how in the 21st century, movie stars, once figures whose names could get movies greenlit and attract audiences to show up, have ceased to matter like they used to, replaced by characters and franchises. So in our last video, we featured a recent survey of moviegoers who were asked which actors were the biggest draw to get them to go see a movie in theaters. And in the top 20, almost all of them had been stars since the 80s or 90s. Only a small handful came from the 21st century. And among that handful were Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds. These two guys have reached the ranks of a select few in Hollywood. I'm talking about Tom Cruise, Leonardo DiCaprio, or Denzel Washington, where their names alone can get an original big-budget movie greenlit. They might appear in franchises, but unlike, say, Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth, their non-franchise movies are hits as well. They've reached a place that most actors dream of, where they can be selective about their projects and work with the very best in the business. And yet, they're not doing that. Both Johnson and Reynolds are talented performers who have given good performances in good, interesting movies, whether as coke-addicted, evangelical, murderous bodybuilders or manipulative gambling addicts. But over the past decade, they have stopped taking any of those roles. They've flattened their on-screen personas into the same repeatable formula every time in a string of movies that seem almost scientifically engineered to evaporate from memory as you're still watching them. The only directors they work with are C-tier yes men, guaranteed to never make an interesting creative choice or challenge them in any way. Outside of Deadpool or Black Adam, I defy anyone to name a single character either of these guys has played. And no, Free Guy is not the character's name. These days, movie stars are in short supply, and if you ask me, these guys are wasting a precious opportunity. So what's the deal? I mean, look, the answer is probably just money, but I think there's a little more nuance to it than that, so let's get into it.
It's time to rock Reynolds and roll! Come on, Patrick, roll the title sequence!
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Patrick Willems, and today we'll be talking about... And joining me today is my new co-host, Nobbles.
The content gobbler!
Sure, the content gobbler.
Thanks, Patrick. It's an honor to be working with you. Now, shall we dig into all the delicious content you have in store for us?
We actually don't use that word here.
But it's the perfect word to describe all that tasty entertainment out there.
Can we cut? Dave, what's the deal? Why do I need a co-host all of a sudden? And why, of all things, does it need to be Nobbles the content gobbler? His name makes no sense.
Nobbles gobbles up all the content, yum, yum, yum. What doesn't make sense about that? Look, you've been making all these videos lately that are like, AI is destroying content and cinema is being murdered, and it's a real fucking bummer, man. Brought in Nobbles to liven things up. And look, it's working.
This guy's the life of the party.
The last time this channel had a lovable sidekick, audience engagement was off the charts. And we made a killing on merch.
Wait, do you mean the coconut? He almost committed dimensional genocide. And worse, he's the reason that I can't show my channel to anyone without a 45-minute explanation.
Yeah, that season went a little off the rails, but we're pretty sure that's not gonna happen again. Hey Tara, can you make sure that Nobbles isn't evil? Thanks.
And he keeps calling everything content. I just made a whole episode about how much I hate that word.
I don't know, man. His focus group test scores are off the charts. Everybody loves this guy. Hey, try it out for one episode. And if you're still not happy, if you still don't like him, I promise you, I'll talk you into another one.
Fine.
Patrick, we have a problem. The camera keeps shifting focus and I'm getting this weird error message.
Mind if I take a look? I'm a bit of a gearhead myself. Voila!
It's fixed. Thanks, Nobbles.
Always happy to lend a hand.
All right, we're ready to go. Isn't it great having Nobbles around?
Yeah, sure. Let's just jump back in.
It's goblin time, baby!
If we want to understand how we got to this current situation with Johnson and Reynolds, first we need to go back to the beginning to learn how we got here. So let's start with Reynolds since his career is simpler.
But first, we have to do a deep dive into Reynolds' big break. Set in a bustling Boston pizzeria, two guys, a girl, and a pizza place was a comical look at post-graduation life in the 90s. It had fun, fresh characters, wacky situations, and just the right amount of romance. Now that's a spicy pizza pie!
Hey, Nobbles, I know I never say this, but we've got to move a little bit faster. Okay, so Ryan Reynolds' early career is defined by two projects. That sitcom that Nobbles just mentioned, which ran for 3 seasons on ABC, and then shortly after that ended, the raunchy college comedy National Lampoon's Van Wilder. Here, Reynolds quickly established more or less the screen persona he would have for the next 20 years. An effortlessly cool guy confidently breezing through the movie who doesn't seem to take anything seriously, including the movie itself, delivering a rapid-fire stream of snarky one-liners. In other words, the popular guy, as Glenn Weldon described the persona in his review of The Adam Project. This is a National Lampoon college comedy, like Animal House updated for the 21st century. Except now, instead of following an underdog slob like John Belushi, it's about a guy who looks like a member of Omega Theta Pi, the villains from Animal House. He's hot and in shape and lusted after by every female character. Since Reynolds is a conventionally handsome actor who had starred in a hit comedy, Hollywood immediately started slotting him into various types of movies to see what worked. There were action movies like Blade Trinity or Smokin' Aces, horror movies like the remake of the Amityville Horror, romantic comedies like Definitely Maybe. Eventually, as every actor in his position does, he had his run at being a superhero. Twice, and both times, famously did not work out. And so for about a decade and a half, Reynolds was a famous actor, but he wasn't a movie star. Occasionally he had a role that fit him well and was in a good movie, like Adventureland, but often he ended up in mediocre or bad projects that coasted on his signature smug brand of comedy or slotted him into generic action roles. And then there's Deadpool.
The merc with the mouth.
Uh-huh.
Chimichangas.
Nobbles, can we continue? Okay, so we all know the story here. Reynolds was cast as Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, in X-Men Origins Wolverine, a dreadful movie, but one where pretty much everyone acknowledged that, yeah, this is the ideal role for him. Unfortunately, that movie was made by stupid people who decided that after his initial few scenes, the character would have his mouth stitched shut and then just covered in makeup so he was unrecognizable as any version of Deadpool, and then mostly played by a stuntman instead of Reynolds. But despite this terrible experience, Reynolds loved the character, and getting a faithful adaptation made became his passion project. Reynolds and director Tim Miller made a test reel for a faithful R-rated Deadpool movie that a couple years later, very conveniently, got leaked online.
And I have a few theories on how it could have happened. Let's go to the conspiracy board.
No, Nobbles, we did that in the last episode. Not again. So anyway, that test reel went viral. Fans freaked out, and Fox immediately greenlit the movie. When it was released in 2016, Deadpool became the highest-grossing R-rated movie of all time. So Reynolds had finally broken through and found his defining character. He was now officially a proper movie star who could make whatever movies he wanted. And what he apparently wanted were a lot of movies that were very similar to Deadpool. Action comedies where he portrayed snarky badasses who, without quite breaking the fourth wall, never seemed to take their situations very seriously. Movies like The Hitman's Bodyguard, Free Guy, Six Underground, Red Notice, Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Like, just look at his cameo in Hobbs and Shaw, where basically every line sounds like it's a punchline to a snarky joke.
How long's it been?
6 months.
Time flies.
When we're apart.
What is your skincare regimen? Because you look like a young Shirley Temple. Go.
Remember when he was Pikachu?
Yeah?
And he had a little hat?
Yeah?
I love that fuzzy little guy.
Okay, whatever. If you ask someone to do a Ryan Reynolds impression, chances are no one will be able to mimic what he sounded like pre-2016, as in pre-Deadpool. But now, post-Deadpool, it's one of the easiest ones to do.
What I really want is almond milk, but it's important that they're free-range almonds, not, milked against their will.
That voice, just pitched up and sarcastic. That's just the Ryan Reynolds voice now, in everything. But Deadpool didn't just change his on-screen persona. Its influence extended to his social media and business ventures as well. See, Fox didn't give Deadpool a huge marketing budget, so Reynolds kind of took charge of selling the movie. He borrowed a costume from the shoot and made various viral videos himself. And obviously, it paid off. The movie made a ton of money and launched a franchise. The marketing for Deadpool got so much attention that Reynolds actually launched an advertising arm of his production company, Maximum Effort, which applies the Deadpool approach to marketing other brands, as well as Reynolds' other movies. So all those ads for Mint Mobile and Aviation Gin, those are all thanks to Deadpool.
Boy, those Mint Mobile commercials sure are straight knee slappers.
So now at the peak of his career, as one of Western cinema's most bankable movie stars, Reynolds could be choosy about his projects and work with the very best in his field. And he has chosen, as his primary recurring collaborator, Shawn Levy, the director of Night at the Museum, the Steve Martin Pink Panther remake, and The Internship. And he's also a producer on Stranger Things. I don't know, man. Look, Levy has now directed Reynolds in 3 projects: Free Guy, The Adam Project, and the most coveted of all, the upcoming Deadpool 3. Okay, and now let's move on to
Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, the Great One, the People's Champion, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, or DJ as his friends call him.
Yes, him. So there's a whole generation of moviegoers out there to whom Dwayne Johnson is primarily just a movie star. And credit where credit's due, he spent years working hard to become one of Hollywood's biggest names. But there's a little bit more to that name that hasn't appeared on movie posters in a while, since he began dropping it around 2010. Yes, folks, it is time to discuss The Rock. And that means diving into a topic that people have been dying for me to discuss ever since my friend and co-writer Siddhant forced me to watch some of it last year: professional wrestling. You see, in the late 1990s, wrestling was one of the biggest things in America. It was crass and violent, and to most 12-year-old boys, that was the coolest thing in the world. Now, even though I was one of the few 12-year-old boys who didn't watch it, I was still aware of two names in particular: Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Austin retired in 2003, right when The Rock was making the jump to Hollywood. So if you're wondering why wrestling hasn't been as popular since then, those are two reasons why. The Rock that we know today, the smooth, likable tequila salesman, was not the Rock who initially made the jump to Hollywood. That Rock was a brash, smack-talking anti-hero who got the audience on his side by insulting them.
You are all unintelligent pieces of trailer park trash.
Which is absolutely the last thing he would ever do today. But if you look into it a little further, or ask any wrestling fan, a really interesting picture starts to emerge of a guy whose identity has always been in flux, but has kind of come full circle. When he first started out, The Rock was Rocky Maivia, after his dad, Rocky Johnson, and his maternal grandfather, the High Chief Peter Maivia. Billed as the first ever third-generation wrestler, he was sold as an instant star before he'd really had a chance to prove himself, and he was given the role of a babyface, or a good guy. Traditionally, something like this would have worked in wrestling. Just look at Hulk Hogan in the 80s. But this was 1996, when everything was starting to get edgy and extreme. It was the dawn of the Attitude Era, and the crowds did not want to be told who to cheer for. They wanted to boo the good guys and cheer the bad guys. And so they rejected Rocky Maivia and started chanting things like "Die, Rocky, die," which Johnson talks about as having had a pretty adverse effect on his mental health. The Rocky Maivia experiment didn't work, and so Johnson made his first hard pivot by shortening his name to just The Rock, and joining a villainous black power group based on the Nation of Islam, known as the Nation of Domination. The 90s were a weird time. The Rock was a full-on bad guy now, rejecting the crowds who had rejected him. But finally, people started to take notice. Once a guy who bounced around in tassels and gave big toothy smiles, this was a man with the edge that people were looking for, and so he leaned into it, and he eventually became a Hollywood douchebag who would show up and pelt the crowd with insults, and they loved it.
You should know your role and shut your mouth!
Here was a guy who was exactly the kind of villain they could cheer for. Charismatic, quick-witted, always cooking something that smelled good, and he was a good actor too. And him being a good actor is clearly part of what got Hollywood's attention, because by 2002, he had already made his film debut in the blockbuster The Mummy Returns, which led to his own spin-off movie, The Scorpion King, for which he became the highest-paid first-time lead actor in Hollywood history. And the more roles he got, well, the less time he clearly had for wrestling. The month after he fought in Stone Cold's retirement match, he leaned even harder into his douchey Hollywood persona so that people would hate him. And then, a month later, he was gone as a full-time wrestler, only making sporadic guest appearances from then on. With his movie career off to a solid start, Johnson did exactly what any huge muscle-bound action guy with limited film acting experience should do. He modeled his career on Arnold Schwarzenegger. The two of them actually made this explicit. In the opening scene of the 2003 movie The Rundown, Schwarzenegger appears in a brief cameo, walking past Johnson and saying,
"Have fun."
The message was clear. Arnold was passing the torch. Here was our next great action star.
Wow.
And so, over the next several years, Johnson made a bunch of action movies. Then in 2007, again following the Schwarzenegger playbook, he made some family movies that paired him on screen with kids. The problem, though, was that outside of The Rundown and his small role in The Other Guys, most of these movies weren't very good. Like Reynolds at the same time, he was famous, but he wasn't really a movie star yet. By 2010, he had dropped The Rock from his name and built a screen persona that was the complete opposite of who he was in the wrestling ring. Here, he might sometimes be a stoic, inspiring hero delivering sappy, emotional monologues, or a big, cuddly, tough guy learning to get along with kids, but he was always the good guy. In 2011, Johnson returned to wrestling to guest host WrestleMania, the purpose of which was actually to set up a match between him and another guy you might have heard of, John Cena, for the following year's WrestleMania in 2012, which was billed as a once-in-a-lifetime bout between major titans. The Rock would still be gone most of the year, but this time there was a return date and a constant social media back and forth between the two superstars. And when The Rock did show back up, well, things got a little bit real.
Dwayne Johnson is a self-centered, egotistical, see-through son of a bitch.
See, this was way before Cena had made the move to Hollywood as well. And though he's since apologized for it, he had a real-life grudge against The Rock, who was a Hollywood hotshot just dropping back in to steal the spotlight from the people putting in the work 24/7. Some of their promos got heated and even went off-script, with Cena embarrassing The Rock in front of a live crowd. It's obviously hard to psychoanalyze this moment from a distance, but this seems to be the moment where Johnson fully internalized the difference between Hollywood and the WWE. Just look at him the week after that promo battle. For the first time, The Rock seems at a loss for words. In Hollywood, he could have complete control over his image, but here, as the crowd mockingly chants "Tooth Fairy" at him, it's like Die Rocky Die all over again. In a Vanity Fair profile from a couple years ago, Johnson mentions that around this time, he got his agents at CAA together for a meeting where he proposed that his acting career needed a reboot. He specifically named Will Smith and George Clooney as the guys whose careers he wanted to emulate. In 2012, he launched his production company, $7 Productions, so he could have more control over his projects and extend his brand to television, hosting various reality competition shows. But the move that really mattered was in 2011, when he joined the cast of the Fast and Furious franchise with the 5th installment, Fast 5. After a decade of trying to carve out a movie career where he's always the star, always the good guy, here he tried something different. Instead of top billed, here he was the "and" in the credits. Instead of the good guy, he was the antagonist, the heel, the hard-ass lawman trying to take down the heroes.
Stay the fuck out of my way.
In other words, he brought in a bit of The Rock. And, as we all know, it paid off. Fast 5, which is a modern masterpiece and one of the best action movies of the century, doubled the box office take of the series' previous installment. It got the best reviews in the series' history. And soon, Johnson was hosting Saturday Night Live and declaring himself to be franchise Viagra. Around this time, he also gave the best performance of his career in Michael Bay's black comedy, Pain and Gain, playing an unhinged bodybuilder who gets addicted to cocaine and in one scene, barbecues severed human hands.
Jesus Christ himself has blessed me with many gifts. One of them is knocking someone the fuck out!
But he would quickly move far away from roles like that. In fact, in the past decade, he has barely ever even acknowledged that he's in Pain and Gain. As he continued with the Fast series, with each movie outperforming the last, Johnson was finally able to leverage that success into his own starring vehicles. As the producer and star, he was now the primary auteur on these movies, and so he would primarily work with the same collection of directors, people like Brad Peyton or Ross and Marshall Thurber, who I'm sure are perfectly nice guys, but they aren't exactly being called visionary filmmakers by anyone. And now that Johnson had control, he was able to make big-budget movies that projected a more heroic image. He finally found success by being a babyface, not a heel.
I don't get what the problem is. Plenty of movie stars have played the same type of character over and over. Cary Grant, John Wayne, Borat. You don't need to fix what ain't broken.
Well, there's more to it than that. See, there's another big factor in this conversation, which is like the reason that we're making this episode, and it's that these guys are not just actors anymore. See, now, acting is only a part of their careers. Over the past decade, both Johnson and Reynolds have used the clout and attention from their acting careers to launch several business ventures. They both started the traditional way, founding their own production companies to develop movie and TV projects. Johnson, as we already mentioned, started 7 Bucks Productions in 2012, and Reynolds founded Maximum Effort in 2018.
Maximum Effort.
But then, things escalated. The path for this was actually paved by George Clooney, who Dwayne Johnson name-checked as one of the guys he wanted to model his career on. In 2013, Clooney co-founded his tequila company, Casamigos, and 4 years later sold it for nearly $1 billion. In an interview, Clooney explained his motivation behind getting into business.
So I made a decision very early on to just work for back end and take the least amount of money so all the money would go on the screen and gamble on the movie being good. If it's good, maybe you make some money. If not, in doing so, I decided that I'd have to focus on other forms of business. I'd have to have a way to make sure and ensure that I could make a living if this didn't work out.
So in other words, Clooney got into business to be able to take more creative risks on quality movies.
Like Tomorrowland.
Not exactly.
Like Leatherheads.
Sort of.
Monuments Men.
Now you're just naming random movies. Please stop. Anyway, what's notable here, especially in comparison to our main subjects today, is that George Clooney has no social media presence. He appears in only 3 videos on the Casamigos YouTube channel, and that's it. He's not out there being a spokesman shilling for his company. That energy he reserves for Nespresso commercials. So a year after the news broke about Clooney's huge Casamigos payday, Ryan Reynolds bought in and became a co-owner of Aviation American Gin. In 2019, Reynolds became co-owner of Mint Mobile. In 2020, Reynolds, along with Rob McElhenney, bought the Wrexham AFC Football Club, a process which they turned into a documentary TV series for FX. In 2021, Reynolds' company, Maximum Effort Marketing, the one he founded after Deadpool blew up, was acquired by Mountain, and Reynolds is now their chief creative officer. The best representation that I've found for Reynolds' current era is this commercial. While he's endorsing a Samsung TV, he inserts additional commercials for his own movie and his own liquor company, and then makes a joke about how ridiculous it is that he's doing this. Okay, and now over to Johnson. Starting in 2013, he launched and hosted multiple reality competition shows like The Hero, Wake Up Call, and The Titan Games. He's had multiple brand partnerships, including an especially successful one with Under Armour. Then in 2020, he purchased the XFL Football League, the league which once begged the question, how do we make the world's most dangerous game more extreme?
The Rock says he's all psyched about the XFL.
The XFL was originally the brainchild of Vince McMahon and had already failed twice over, but at this point, The Rock was bigger and more successful than wrestling itself. That same year, Johnson launched both Zoa energy drinks and Terramana tequila. In an interview with CNN, he specifically brought up Clooney's company to point out how he's outselling them. In the Netflix documentary series Arnold, Arnold Schwarzenegger explains how he took a similar approach to Clooney. Early in his career, his mentor helped him get into real estate so that he would have that to rely on financially and could focus on making good movies instead of taking bad paycheck jobs. Now, this is purely speculation on my part, but maybe there's a chance that Arnold gave George Clooney that advice on the set of Batman and Robin. That would be fun. Now, the irony here is that unlike Clooney and Schwarzenegger, it doesn't seem like Reynolds and Johnson got into business so that they could take artistic risks. Instead, it seems like the businesses have become the priority, and as those have grown, their movie work has become increasingly safe and forgettable. Somehow, Schwarzenegger, the bodybuilder who could barely speak English, was more interested in making good movies than these guys are.
And that's why portfolio diversification pays off, kids.
Sure. It's easy to forget that earlier in their careers, both Johnson and Reynolds took on a variety of interesting and challenging roles. Like Reynolds made Buried, the movie that's essentially a one-man show with him buried underground in a coffin for 95 minutes.
Or as I like to call it, Lock in a Box.
Wow, Emma, with Nobbles constantly interrupting, I kind of forgot you were here.
I love it. Really takes the pressure off of me.
And I just live for the spotlight.
Yeah, I can tell. So, Reynolds made Buried, which was a real serious acting challenge, and he subverted his natural charm to play complicated characters in Adventureland and Mississippi Grind. Johnson played a gay bodyguard in Be Cool. He lampooned his persona in The Other Guys. He did a straight drama in Gridiron Gang. I mean, Jesus Christ, the guy made Southland Tales, one of the most unhinged movies of the century. And of course, as we already mentioned, he is terrific in Pain and Gain and Fast Five, in performances that make fantastic use of both his physical presence and natural charisma. So the great big question here is, why won't these guys make movies like those anymore? And why do they keep making such bad movies instead?
I actually like Skyscraper.
Nobbles? Shut up. Over the past 6 or 7 years, Johnson and Reynolds have narrowed their movie roles into nearly identical personas that they keep across all their movies, ensuring brand consistency. They're like a McDonald's double cheeseburger. It never changes, the majority of America loves it, and if it's the lead in a major movie, you can probably skip it. This flattening of their movie roles began around the time they started their transition into business moguls. When you see Ryan Reynolds in a movie, he's not really any different than Ryan Reynolds in a Mint Mobile commercial or on Welcome to Wrexham. Brand consistency is key. Reynolds' movies even quote his other movies.
Superhero landing!
If you look at Dwayne Johnson's social media and YouTube, the businesses and movies completely overlap. Here's Terramana in Red Notice. Here's a video promoting Jungle Cruise that is really about Johnson and Emily Blunt drinking Terramana. Here he is discussing Black Adam while drinking Zoa Energy. Here he is rapping in a music video and then drinking Terramana. The new Dwayne Johnson persona goes something like this. Stoic, heroic, responsible men, often former military, like in Skyscraper, Rampage, and San Andreas. He's usually a family man, trying to rescue his family, like San Andreas and Skyscraper, or in Black Adam, fighting to honor the legacy of his dead family while also rescuing his new surrogate family. For a guy who started his career as the heir to Schwarzenegger, he surprisingly rarely touches guns on screen anymore. In Skyscraper, his character actually has a vow to never use guns again. And very importantly, there is zero sexuality, which is honestly kind of shocking for a guy who looks like that. But as huge and jacked, as charismatic as he is absolutely 100% never horny. If there is a romantic interest, there is zero sexual tension, and they really feel more like friends. He rarely even kisses anyone on screen, and when he does, it is often obscured by the back of a head, or like in Hobbs and Shaw, everyone just looks extremely uncomfortable, like 6th graders playing spin the bottle. And then other times, like in Rampage, he will just turn down women who are interested in him because he has no apparent interest in the opposite sex. In the Fast series, you can actually see his character evolve away from the original hard-ass antagonistic Hobbs from movie to movie. His voice changes, he spends more time smiling and cracking jokes, until by his 4th appearance, he is just the same guy as in all his other movies, a lovable single dad with an adorable daughter.
Just here to bring in 2 assholes whose names hit my desk. Or some wannabe tough guy prick who beat a man half to death with a socket wrench.
And a lot of time at Tay-Tay concerts.
Tay-Tay? Taylor Swift.
In Hobbs and Shaw, his spin-off movie, he even loses the goatee, so now he just looks exactly like every other Dwayne Johnson character. Over the years, there has been much speculation about whether or not Johnson will eventually run for president of the United States. Speculation that really ignited with the release of his recently canceled semi-autobiographical sitcom, Young Rock. The single-camera sitcom followed young Dwayne, or Dewey, as they call him, in 3 different timelines before he was famous, showing him interacting with various classic wrestlers, navigating domestic troubles, and getting jacked. You know, sitcom stuff. This was sort of aimed at creating entertainment out of a clean-cut mythology, and the framing device was actually Johnson himself, sometime in the near future, telling all these stories on his campaign trail as he runs for president. Tongue-in-cheek jab, our statement of intent? We may never know for sure, but what's clear is the image he wants to create for himself is shockingly similar to someone running for political office, including his rags to riches, pull yourself up by your bootstraps story, the American dream. He's a clean, friendly, hard-working person with simple, relatable morals, and someone you'd like to have a beer with. But only on cheat days when he can afford the calories.
And here's a picture of one of The Rock's big cookie cheat days. Would you look at how big those cookies are? They're so big. Now that's soft, warm chocolate chip content.
And now this image extends to all his movies as well. If you look at his new screen persona, he's representing all the values a political candidate would want to project. He's a family man. He supports troops and veterans, but avoids using guns. He supports people with disabilities. He cares about animals. He's a strong leader who can take responsibility, and most importantly, zero sex ever. But recently, despite Netflix claiming that Red Notice is the most popular movie of all time, or some other insane thing that I don't believe for a second, it seems like audiences aren't as excited about Johnson's new brand of blandness as they used to be. Jungle Cruise was a flop. And Black Adam, a movie he literally spent a decade hyping up, did not end up changing the hierarchy of power in the DC universe. At least, not in the way he'd hoped. In the end, it turned out that the movie was mostly an excuse to boost his own brand by teeing up a movie where he would fight Superman, the movie equivalent of returning to WrestleMania a decade earlier to fight John Cena. And so, coming off of these failures, Johnson pivoted. Earlier this year, he put aside his long-standing beef with Vin Diesel and retreated back to the main Fast and Furious franchise. Around the same time, he also announced that he would be spearheading a live-action remake of Moana, in which he will reprise his role as Maui, who he voiced in the original animated film. And when the actor strike put him on the sidelines for a bit, he made a random appearance at a WWE show in Colorado. He is a guy who has plenty of fallbacks, but those fallbacks always seem to be whatever is comfortable and familiar when new territory doesn't work out. With so many of his recent movies, he's trying to be a good guy against all odds, even if it means playing a dimensionless babyface. He's come all the way back to being Rocky Maivia, only this time, there's no live crowd to hurt him the way wrestling fans once did. As Kyle Buchanan put it in a piece for Vulture in 2018, Johnson has the power to get nearly any movie made, yet the movies he's making seem like parody posters that would be hung up if he strolled through a season of Entourage. He's one of the few stars getting original movies made, and yet every one of those movies feels like a watered-down version of some beloved film from a couple decades ago. Skyscraper is Die Hard. San Andreas and Rampage are Roland Emmerich disaster movies. Jungle Cruise is The Mummy meets Pirates of the Caribbean. Even Black Adam turns out to basically just be Terminator 2, right down to the teen boy teaching the unstoppable killing machine to say catchphrases. Over time, Johnson's persona has become like a tech CEO mixed with a motivational speaker. Like, look at this video that I am obsessed with.
2 words. Black Adam. Guys, your global reaction and response to our world premiere trailer of Black Adam yesterday was staggering. Staggering. 98% positive review and reaction.
There are so many weird things about this. The way he describes movies as properties.
I've launched some big properties in my career, from Jungle Cruise, Jumanji, Hobbs and Shaw. You know what this property means to me deep down here. I'm so passionate about this property.
And talks about disruption.
It's ushering a new era in the DC universe, with excitement, with disruption, with vision, with strategy.
In this Instagram post about his upcoming Amazon movie, Red One, he calls it a Christmas franchise film. And I'm sorry, Dwayne, but you cannot just announce that an original movie is also a franchise film. That's not how franchises work. Announcing a franchise before anyone has seen the first movie is how we got the Dark Universe. Johnson and Reynolds have collaborated multiple times, most notably in Red Notice. But Reynolds also has an extended cameo in Hobbs and Shaw, and Johnson has a voice cameo in Free Guy. Similarly, Johnson has collaborated several times with Kevin Hart in Central Intelligence, 2 Jumanji movies, and Hart's cameo in Hobbs and Shaw. A lot of cameos in that movie. I don't think it's a coincidence that these are also the actors who are most focused on being entrepreneurs. Hart actually might have more companies and endorsement deals than anybody else. These cameos and co-starring roles really feel more like strategic brand partnerships than anything else.
Okay, Patrick. So after all this criticizing, what do you think these guys should be doing? I say double down and make more businesses. Rock Reynolds president and VP double bill.
First of all, Nobbles, no. Second of all, Reynolds can't be vice president because, as we all know, he was born in Canada. Just please stop interrupting and let me get through the rest of the episode. Look, I watched a lot of movies for this. And again, despite all my criticisms, I do think that both of these guys are talented, and they have given performances that I think are really good. So here's my pitch for what I think these enormously successful, astoundingly wealthy actors should be doing instead. Dwayne Johnson needs to go back to doing what he did right at the start of his career, following the Schwarzenegger blueprint. In terms of screen presence, there is no one closer to him than Arnold. And unlike Arnold, Dwayne Johnson is a native English speaker with a greater acting range. He already has a huge advantage. What Schwarzenegger was great at was identifying quality and talent and just trying to make great movies. He starred in James Cameron's first movie and John McTiernan's second, and he would re-team with both of those guys, who are 2 of the best action filmmakers of all time. Both Cameron and McTiernan subverted his image in different ways. Cameron made him a monster, then an unlikely ally, and then the lead in a romantic comedy. McTiernan made him the final girl in a slasher movie, and then did a meta-commentary on his entire filmography. And when Arnold made a comedy, he teamed up with Ivan Reitman, director of Ghostbusters. When Dwayne Johnson made a comedy, he teamed up with the director of We're the Millers. Like, come on, man, you gotta aim higher than that. It's not that I think Johnson needs to make R-rated movies with guns, although it would be nice to have The Rock in a real proper action movie again. He just needs to make something that actually feels visceral. He is an astounding physical presence. He looks superhuman. But all his recent movies place him in front of a green screen and surround him with endless CGI goop. His physical presence means nothing when he's already in a cartoon. To take advantage of his natural attributes, we need to see him in real locations and real action. Again, like Arnold. His impossible physical appearance is way more effective when framed against reality, instead of CGI jungles and explosions. And seriously, just take some chances, play a villain or something. Look, you know who played villains and made R-rated movies and killed people on screen and still became an elected politician? That's right. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Ryan Reynolds, despite being a more traditional actor, is oddly tougher to figure out than Johnson. In terms of who he resembles, it's easy to say like Robert Downey Jr. with his fast-talking quippiness, but he lacks Downey's fragility and pathos. You could compare him to 80s comedy stars like Bill Murray or Chevy Chase, but he's too pretty and too self-satisfied. Chevy Chase had similarly waspy vibes, but he undercut that by falling down all the time. And Bill Murray has a weirdo blue-collar charm that Reynolds can never reach because he just feels too much like a yuppie frat boy even in his late 40s. His greatest success, Deadpool, is built off of being a guy who doesn't care, who knows he's in a movie and that this is all silly and nothing matters. But there are also two key components that make Deadpool work that many of his other projects lack. Number one, he's ugly. Deadpool is covered in horrible burns, and so they unpretty Reynolds. And number two, he's low status. He's annoying, and every other character in the movies hates him. See, the element that is usually Reynolds' biggest issue, but can be weaponized by the right filmmakers, is that he inherently seems insincere. I know these are actors and their job is to play a role, but actors are also human beings who come with inherent attributes that are just part of their general vibe as people. And with Reynolds, he almost always comes off as a guy who can't be trusted because he doesn't really care that much. He uses this to his advantage as a spokesperson for Mint Mobile and Aviation Gin, where he's self-deprecating and has a general vibe of, isn't it weird that I own this company and I'm here doing this? Buy it if you want, I don't really care. But in his movies, it can be hard to care when the guy on screen doesn't seem to. This is what broke Six Underground for me. In a Michael Bay movie, you need a lead who believes in the insanity of this world, not someone looking around raising an eyebrow at it. His best roles by far are Mississippi Grind and Adventureland, where he's playing guys who coast on their charm and charisma and good looks and are revealed to be dishonest people who are pretty hollow inside and pretty shitty to those who get to know them. It also means that he's a guy who you want to see put in tough situations where his charm can't get him out. You want to see this guy struggle. And so in Buried are, no joke, The Proposal, he's surprisingly effective since he has to drop the smirk. He plays frustration surprisingly well. To prepare for this video, I watched every single episode of the show Welcome to Wrexham, and until 14 episodes in, I could not tell if Reynolds genuinely cared or not. Every time there was another setback with the team, I just expected him to go, you know, never mind. I'm out. I don't like this. I do have to say, the show is actually pretty good, despite the occasional nagging feeling that this is maybe just branded content. But one of the more satisfying developments over the course of the show is watching Reynolds gradually start to care. In episode 7 of season 2, when he's almost reduced to tears watching the team play a match, it's shocking to see him display this level of sincerity and vulnerability on screen. And so, after that whole diagnosis, what should Reynolds do? Just do what like Tom Cruise did back in the 90s. You're at this point, now is the time to link up with exciting directors. Just go to your favorite filmmakers and say, hey, use me however you want. But of course, if he plays an unlikable character, that might damage the brand consistency and hurt Mint Mobile sales. So, Alas, that's probably off the table. Look, I acknowledge that I am suggesting these guys should conform to an old-fashioned kind of movie stardom, because at the end of the day, I just have to admit, I don't give a shit about Mint Mobile or Terramana Tequila. I have zero interest in how much money they make from these companies. I just want some of our last real movie stars to use that stardom to make some good movies.
But Patrick, isn't it just that these guys saw where things were going? That they're just the new kind of movie star?
Yes, Nobbles, I was getting to that. God, even when you're posing a decent question, you're still stepping on my toes. So yes, maybe these guys saw the gradual collapse of cinema coming, and streaming eating everything, and they decided, hey, what if we could be the first of a new breed, the true 21st century celebrity, a cross between actor and influencer and entrepreneur, where a new movie will also promote their liquor brand, and their marketing company will produce funny Instagram videos promoting both. Everything feeds into each other, and these guys make hundreds of millions of dollars. Look, they seem to be happy. Their lives seem exhausting, especially Johnson's, but they seem to like what they're doing. Like, Reynolds seems genuinely excited to be making funny TV commercials. But still, I just cannot imagine that 20 years from now, these guys are gonna look back proudly at Red Notice or Rampage or Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. But also, in 20 years, they'll both probably own their own private countries, so whatever, they're fine. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned and out of touch. And of course, there is one other possibility that I have to mention. One that I think is truly the case with some actors, like John Travolta or Tom Holland. Maybe they just have bad taste. Like, genuinely. Maybe they just happen to like bad movies, and so the bad movies they're making is the stuff they would want to watch anyway. It's possible.
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Ryan R.I.P.D. Reynolds having bad taste? But they're so darn funny.
Nobbles, who cares? What does them being funny have to do with anything?
Well, Patrick, you yourself said they spent years cultivating their personas like a master chef working on their ultimate recipe. Maybe you just don't like the recipe. You know, not everyone has the same taste.
Are you implying that I have bad taste?
Well, no, that's not what I was saying.
Oh my
what
God,
I
hate this. You spent this entire episode constantly cutting me off with bad opinions and undermining all the points I've been trying to make.
Well,
You just what?
Oh no, we better cut.
I spent 4 years studying cinema studies at Oberlin College in Ohio. What kind of credentials do you have?
Well, I double majored in classics and behavioral sciences at Brown. And I have a master's in comparative literature from Columbia.
That seems impossible.
I didn't mean for you to get so upset. I'm just trying to give the audience some laughs. Boop. Achoo! Oopsies.
Fuck this. Dave, I'm done.
What's up, Patrick? I am slammed today.
Dave, I swear to God, if I have to work with that little turd for another minute, I'm gonna light him on fire.
Come on, Siskel and Ebert argued all the time, and they had one of the most popular shows and successful marriages in Hollywood.
Siskel and Ebert weren't married.
Well, not legally.
Look, the point is, we gotta get this guy off the show. There must be another option.
So the reason we added Nobbles in the first place was to increase audience engagement. If we were to give the audience something else to be excited about, we wouldn't need Nobbles anymore. Here's my pitch.
No, absolutely not. I swore years ago never to do this again. Does a man's word mean nothing to you, Dave? Nothing? Look, I have a better idea.
Interesting. How about...
Hey guys, what's this game we're playing? It's fun.
Hey, Nobbles, can you give us like 5 minutes? We're trying to negotiate something here.
Of course. Hey Dave, we still on for bowling tonight?
Oh, dude, of course. I'll see you there. That guy can roll. This is my final offer.
Fuck you. I'll do it. Yes, it's true. The finale for the current season is coming next month, and we made a huge 1960s style TV holiday special. It's got songs, it's got special guests, it's got shocking revelations, and yes, it has the thing that I swore I would never do again, a video essay about Star Wars.
Are we in it?
Yeah, of course you guys are.
All right, yeah.
Okay, you can move on. Look, this has been a crazy year for the videos. We went to India, we had Mission Impossible, we made multiple feature-length videos, we have a Muppet in the cast now, and this is like the culmination of all of that. This might be, and probably is, the craziest thing that we've done all year. And it's premiering in December, exclusively on Nebula. So if you haven't joined Nebula, now is the time, because we wouldn't have been able to make this otherwise. They gave us the budget to hire a set designer and build this big set, which you will be seeing soon. And if you use the link in the description to sign up, it helps fund future projects like this, because the point of Nebula is to make the big ambitious stuff that we can't make on YouTube. And available for a limited time only, because it's the week of Black Friday, we have lifetime memberships back again. So you can sign up once and never have to pay again. You're just set for life. And the thing about lifetime memberships is that they go directly into funding new Nebula originals, including the short film that I will be making next year. So that's all for now. The holiday special is coming. I'm so excited about it. We shot it last month and it's looking amazing. Can't wait for you all to see it. And that's all. Hope you're having a lovely Thanksgiving. Bye.